Um, Good morning, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Sidrani. As you know that uh, this this program is just connect the people who are doing great work in this world, who are very hard work, and they are doing a they are doing work on the very noble causes. So, as my promise, as uh, the commitment of this program, I'll just invite one my guest in this show today. She's from Florida. Her name is Janai Messenger. The very good and interesting thing is that she is occupational therapist, as well as she's international and local educationist and motivational speaker. So, but the interesting thing is that she is a very kind heart person. So this is presenting Janai. Hi.
Hi, I'm so incredibly grateful and thankful to have the opportunity to have the interview today with you. I know it took a little bit for us to coordinate and our scheduling, so I'm incredibly grateful for all that you're doing into the world and having interviews all over, just connecting people and just having opportunity to have conversation. I know you work as a speech therapist. Yeah, that's amazing. The interconnection of being in the service of others and helping people is just something that really brought me to want to work and become an occupational therapist.
Okay. First of all, actually, in Pakistan, here is a less awareness about speech therapist, about occupational therapist. So please, I just request to you starting from that thing, uh, what you are doing, and what's your command on this subject.
So, a little bit about occupational therapy. Simply, I like to define it as anything that occupies a person's time. If a person is having a challenge with whether it's eating, sleeping, writing, getting from one room to another, an occupational therapist can be there to help the individual, any occupation. I primarily work within the pediatric population, so my big focus when working with children is working on play skills, working on their ability to manipulate items, fine motor skills, gross motor skills. Sorry, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. Okay, I think now it's a little bit better. So, a little bit of a nutshell with occupational therapy and within the pediatric population, working a lot on with little ones that have a developmental disability. Some of them have a diagnosis of autism, Down syndrome. Some of the little ones, they don't have a diagnosis. So, it's a really a big variation of the children that I work with. Some individuals can sit, read, and write, and some individuals they cannot because age appropriately it may not be expected, and then maybe cognitively they're just not at that place and at that point yet to be able to. So, as an occupational therapist, I look at the individual as a whole picture, as a whole individual. I focus a lot, especially when working with little kids, having conversation with parents, having conversations with other providers that are on the team, whether it's a speech therapist, a physical therapist, a special educational teacher, maybe there's a nutritionist involved, maybe there's a psychologist or a social worker, having conversation with individuals, and especially my focus is on functionality. How is this child functioning in their day-to-day life? How are they functioning in school? How are they functioning at home? How are they functioning with socialization in terms of their friends and their family? Are they able to interact appropriately? Are they able to have conversations? So when I first initially start working with a client, I do an evaluation and I'm typically assessing areas of occupation. I want to know about their activities of daily living. Are they able to get dressed on their own? Are they able to feed on their own? I'm curious to know about their sleeping habits. And a lot of the times, maybe I'll talk to the child depending on their age, but a lot of the time, I'm talking to the parents and having conversation with them as well. And in terms of school, I'm very interested in their fine motor abilities. How are they holding a pen? How are they holding a pencil? Are they able to sit in an upright position or are they slouching down? Are they having difficulty with paying attention to the teacher, to me? Are they getting distracted very easily? Are they not tolerating certain textures, maybe certain clothing, maybe certain stockings, maybe they're not tolerating certain things in their hair, or maybe they are, maybe they're excessively touching things and seeking the need to feel things. So I kind of want to get a sense of their sensory system. How is their vestibular system, their movement system processing? When I put them on a swing, are they able to tolerate that swing? Are they able to tolerate the movement? Are they getting really nauseous right away? So that's really looking at their vestibular system. Then I want to have an idea about their proprioception. Are they having an idea of the amount of pressure when they're coloring, when they're writing? Are they exerting too much? Are they exerting too little? Maybe stemming from something happening with their proprioception system. Then I'm also want to look at their visual motor and their visual perception. Are they able to do word search and crosswords? Are they able to complete puzzles? Are they able to complete mazes to get an idea of how is their eyes processing the information that they're seeing? Another area that I like to focus in on is their eye-hand coordination. Are they able to take a ball, throw a ball into the hoop? Are they able to take color and cut out the image that they created, glue it down onto paper? That's also looking at their eye-hand coordination. So I'm looking at this collectiveness and the collaboration of a lot of different skills, and I'll have a conversation with the child also, and I'll ask them, what do you love to do? What is your challenge? What is trickiness for you? And I'll try to create treatment plans and treatment ideas that are really focusing in on what the child wants to do. So let's say, for example, a child that really loves to do basketball and maybe they're having difficulty with eye-hand coordination, so I'll teach them different skills and different techniques so that they'll better improve their eye-hand coordination. It may be directly doing the basketball or maybe indirectly with doing some other skills and other activities. So that's kind of like in a nutshell of occupational therapy in within the pediatrics area.
That's amazing. My next question is, my next question is, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My next question is, why occupational therapy is important when one child is suffering with autism or a Down syndrome?
Okay, very, very great question. It's really individualized and it really varies from children that have autism or children that have Down syndrome or to children that have CP. So it's going to vary with the skills that we're going to work on. So I'm going to make a very generalization. So individuals that have Down syndrome, there's a tendency for their muscles to be very, very low tone, meaning that their just basic body creation and their muscles are just have a tendency to be very weak. So a big focus within occupational therapy or within the skills that I may be working on is strengthening their muscles. It's very likely that I would focus a lot on their core strength, their shoulder strength, their hand strength. I would want to do a lot of movement. I would want to do a lot of different obstacle courses that helps facilitate increasing tone. So that's just an example with a child that has Down syndrome and what I may be working on, just generalization based on what typically individual that Down syndrome have. They typically present as having very low tone. For children that have autism, there's a big spectrum of kids that have autism spectrum disorder. Some individuals have, I think about 80% of children that have autism spectrum disorder have a sensory processing disorder. So there are about, let's say, 15 to 20% of these children that do not. So a lot of the time, my primal focus when working with kids that have autism is their sensory system, their regulation system. Are they, and a lot of the times there's a tendency for their system to be really over responsive or really under responsive within different areas. So their system may be very under responsive with vestibular, which is movement, and they may seek and need a lot of spinning and running and a lot of movement to help activate their system. Or their system may be very over responsive when it comes to touch. I may touch the child and they may just have a meltdown, or they may be not tolerating sticky putty or Play-Doh or things like that. So that's a tendency that I've noted. So it really varies. A lot of the times when I am collectively working with individuals that have Down syndrome, CP, ADHD, whatever the diagnoses, I typically, even before getting the referral, I do not even look at the evaluation format. I'll have conversation with mom or dad or primary caregiver, And I'll ask them, please don't tell me diagnoses. I really just want to hear about your child. Who is your child? What is their strengths? What is their abilities? What can they do? And now, after that, once I have that, I ask them about what is their challenges? What is their weaknesses? What things can we maybe tweak a little bit, help a little bit? How can I come in and be of assistance so that the child and so that the parent can help improve? Sorry, there's a lawnmower right next door. So give it a second. And hopefully it's going to stop. I may relocate if this does not stop. The joys of in the moment and being outdoors and yep. Sorry, 1 second. Can you still hear me? Okay, so I'm going to continue and I'm going to try to talk a little bit louder. So when working with the little ones, the intention is that I'm looking at their functionality and I want to see their ability to function in their day-to-day environment. That's really the intention. And within individuals, it's not really any different for the most part collectively when working with a child that has autism or Down syndrome, because I really like to focus in on what skills can they do and how can I be there to enhance. And there's a tendency for kids that have autism to have challenge in particular areas, and there's a tendency for kids that have Down syndrome to have challenges in another particular area as well.
It's okay. It's a part of life, and hurdles are coming when you do something good for others. So, my next question is, uh, how the occupational therapy support early childhood development.
So from 0 till about 6 years old, the brain is extremely neuroplastic, meaning that the brain is very sponge like and very receptive to experiences. And the more enriching experiences that you're able to expose a child to, especially at a younger age, the more neural connectivity that is happening inside the brain. So ideally, the younger the child is, especially for a child that's really struggling and is in the need of maybe occupational therapy, speech therapy, maybe there's the need of feeding therapy, whatever it may be, exposing the child to a young age, especially if there's a tendency or if there's a knowing that there's a likelihood of being some type of disability. So exposing the child to therapy can really, really help with early childhood development. It's not to say that once the child is past 6 years old that if they're receiving therapy that they're not going to benefit. They 100% will. The idea is enriching experiences primal, especially children learn through their five senses. They learn through hearing, through touching, through tasting, through feeling. So exposing them, whether a child has a disability or not, is primal, and foundation can really, really have a benefit to the child and to collectively to their system. And especially a big part of my training is developmental milestones and functionality and activity analysis and breaking down activities and skills so that it can meet the individual's needs. So the idea is with any type of therapy, even with any type of early exposure, enriching, going to the playground, going to the beach, going to learning how being exposed to mom and dad's their cooking, mom and dad their cleaning, having that enriched exposure to maybe educational shows that really are teaching primal foundational skills. But I think the primal thing is actually the child doing, physically teaching the child, doing play-doh, making putty, making crafts, having conversations with the child. I feel like that is primal within early education.
Okay, my next question is related to the occupational therapy and how occupational therapy is supportive us to do our work. Like, I know the occupational therapist uh, made some machinery to help uh, the patient to work on a daily basis task. Just like if someone is not able to hold the cup, so occupational therapist uh, first of all, occupational therapy is therapist made a one any instrument to help them to pick up the cup and drink something. So please tell us how occupational therapy is technically helps us if someone is affected by strokes. So after when body stroke one side is affected, so how occupational therapy help them according to their knowledge.
So occupational therapists, I personally don't work with individuals that have stroke. I've had schooling about it, so that's not necessarily my area of expertise, but based on my exposure and based on my learning. So if individuals that have experienced a stroke, it's really focusing in, especially if they're having paralysis on one side of the body. The idea is the occupational therapist can come in and to help, want to try to strengthen the effective side and the ineffective side so that the client can help promote and improve their functionality. So, for example, if a client is not having really a lot of movement and motion in their upper extremity, an occupational therapist may create some type of assistive device and technology. For example, maybe they're going to have a specialized cup, or maybe if the client is having difficulty with eating, they're going to have a specialized spoon to help them. The client is maybe having difficulty with getting dressed, and they're typically, we need to use both sides of our body typically to be able to don and doff our socks. So an OT may come in and give a client an assistive device that actually helps them be able to take on and off their socks. Also, in terms of working with the client's stroke, an occupational therapist also may assess cognition, because I know depending on what area of the brain is affected, the therapist may come in and assess what is their ability to be able to live independently. What is their safety awareness? If, let's say, for example, they're cooking in the home and the fire gets left on, do they have the memory and the awareness to remember that I'm cooking and I need to go back and turn off the stove? So that's some of the ideas of what an occupational therapist would do in terms of working with a client in a stroke. And it's always going back with any discipline in any area that an OT is working in. It's always looking at functionality. What is their function? What is their day-to-day daily occupations, their daily skills that they need to do, whether they're an adult or a child. For a child, their primary occupation is play. For adult, their primary occupation may stem from their work, or it may stem from taking care of family, or may stem taking care of other individuals, maybe not even in relation to their family. So it really, really varies, and it's very individualized to the client.
Once again, thank you, Junai. My next question is, uh, if one child is CP child, so occupational therapy effect on their body, and it will be help to do some uh, work like eating, like drinking, and some body structure will be formed.
So for individuals that have CP, there are a few different types of CP. So again, it varies on the type. So typically, a child that is having CP, their mobility and their movement is impaired, whether it's both upper extremities, both lower extremities. It can maybe just be one side of the body. It can be all four limbs of the body. So it really, really varies. Some individuals that have CP may have the ability to walk. Some individuals that have CP may not have the ability to walk. So really, it's going to vary. So a lot of the times when working with individuals that do have CP, doing a lot of positioning and motion, a lot of joint range of motion, a lot of manipulation. And let's say teaching the child to, let's say, eat, or teaching the child to be able to write, it's going to really vary. Some individuals can do it independently with no devices, and some individuals may need some type of adapted pencil, or they may need some type of adapted spoon or fork to use. It really depends on the range of motion of their hands. Is their hands fisted? If their hands are fisted, maybe we're going to have some type of strap placed on their hands so that they're able to eat, so that they're able to write. If their hands aren't as fisted and maybe their muscles is a little bit flaccid or spastic, meaning that their muscles, flaccid would be just really weak, and spastic that their muscles would kind of just be very tight and kind of at times can be maybe even in motion. It really varies. But then potentially I would be able to provide typical pen or pencil, or I may have to provide a pen or pencil that's a little bit bigger and a little bit thicker. So it's really going to vary depending on the individual and depending on what their need is. I have my training is at one of the big trainings is activity analysis. It's being able to see. So let's say we need to eat every day. So what skills are required to eat? You need to potentially be able to sit in an upright position. You need to be able to have your plate in front of you and being able to take the spoon, bring it, scoop into the plate, bring it up to your mouth and manipulate. So that's requiring a lot of different skills. And if a client is having difficulty with this type of motion, how can I make it a little bit easier for them? What can I do? Maybe I'm going to make the table a little higher. Maybe I'm going to make the table a little bit lower. How can I match where the client's at to teach them and to help them to be able to perform that occupation? That may be some of the time, or it may be that maybe I'm going to work on this motion with a game or with a toy, and then when it comes to actual functionality and when the client is coming to needing to eat, then they've worked on the skills so much that it can translate over. So I can do a collectiveness of working on the strengthening of it directly with the activity. I can work on it maybe potentially with muscles, so it really is going to vary.
My next question is about sensories issues. You know, are all neurodiversity disorders kids have an issue in sensories? So, occupational therapy affects or impact on the sensories issues, or we need to do any other things for the sensories issues?
So I do think that a lot of children that have neural developmental challenges or that have developmental delays and a lot of diagnoses, there is a close link between sensory processing and different conditions. Just on a complete side, I think that we all have sensory and we all have sensory trickinesses and challenges in our day-to-day life. So let's say, for example, I may have a preference of not wearing a turtleneck shirt because every time I'm wearing the shirt, it's feeling like it is choking me. So I intentionally am choosing not to wear the shirt, and I can go on my day-to-day life and I'm like fine and everything is well and dandy. I may not like certain tights or certain stockings because I'm wearing it and putting on my feet. It just feels very uncomfortable. Okay, so I'm going to try a different type of company. Maybe I'm going to wear stockings that are a little bit bigger so I'm not feeling it. So I'm able to change that and I'm able to modulate that. And these are like something that is like my new. It's not impeding on my everyday function whether I'm wearing a turtleneck or not. So what makes it different for an individual that has sensory processing is that it's impeding on their function. They cannot tolerate wearing this turtleneck. They cannot tolerate wearing the socks. And even if you're putting up different types of socks, they may not be able to tolerate it. And I always like to give this image. Picture going into a pool. There's some people that go into a pool, they just jump right in, they're all set, and they're good. Then there's some people that need to go into the pool slowly. They dip one toe in, then the next toe in, and the next toe in, and they need to just slowly get into the pool, and then they're good and they're set and they're dandy. Then there's other people that can't even get into the pool. Why? Because the water and the coolness and the coldness of their skin just feels too much. And typically that's similarly for individuals that are having sensory processing disorder. It's to that degree of them. They can't even they can't even fathom to get to that place because it's so strong and so intense. So that's the big difference between individuals that have a sensory processing disorder and then individuals that have trickinesses or they have preferences, because we all have preferences. We all have sensory trickinesses. We like certain foods, we don't like certain foods. We like roller coasters, we don't like roller coasters. And when it becomes a challenge, it's when it's impeding on function. For a child that needs to go to school and they need to wear clothing and they're just not tolerating the clothing on their skins and they would prefer to not have a shirt on, and that's not so appropriate when you're going into school or when it's freezing cold outside. So the idea is, as an occupational therapist, come in and assess what is the challenges that this child is experiencing and creating a sensory diet. Typically there's 3 primal ingredients of a sensory diet. And I mentioned these terms in the beginning. There's the vestibular system, which is one of the most powerful sensory systems that we have in our body. And that has a lot to do with our movement and it has a lot to do with our inner ear. There's the proprioception, is where our body is. It's really the amounts of muscles and exertion that I elicit to do motion and to do activity. And the last really strong one is the tactile system. And the tactile system is our touch and our feel. And individuals that are having sensory processing, a lot of the times I'm going to create a diet that works directly with the vestibular, with the proprioception, and the tactile system to be able to help this child be able to regulate, let's say in terms of clothing, regulate being able to sit in the classroom, regulate in terms of being able to tolerate a bright light, depending on the child and what their challenge is. Maybe they're having difficulty sitting. So I'm going to come up with different ideas and different diets to help them be able to sit throughout the day. Maybe they are having difficulty with eating certain foods. So I'm going to do different sensory diets to help increase the tolerance of different foods.
Thank you for your very productive information you are sharing with us according to my question. Okay, my next question is about your book, Breath, Breath, Breath.
So I'm about to publish my first book. The intention of this book is to be in service of others, and ego speaking a little bit of how I really wanted to access thousands upon millions of children. I feel like the intention of this book is to help parents so that they can be of assistance and be of aid to their children. So the main focus of this book is on mindfulness meditation and how exposing children to their breath at a very young way in a very fun pictorial manner can really help promote more peace and more love and more kindness into the world. And the idea is for the parents. The book is not only for the children, it's also the parents. The parents actually buying the book, taking the time to read the book, and implementing some potentially mindfulness meditation practice. And I believe that it can make the world a lot better place, and it can make people just be more calm and collective and kind and interact more in a positive outlook and a positive way. And it's so needed within today's society. And this is my way of giving back and bringing into the world this book that is just simple and very cute, and it really puts mindfulness meditation in a very fun, exciting way for children so that they can have the exposure at a young age to it.
That's amazing thing. Uh, I just ask one question about this pandemic situation. All therapists are stuck on their in their homes, and my all their kids whose are neurodevelopment disorders and whose are suffering for any type of disorders and disabilities. So what you suggest to the parents, how they work with them, and how they are going to be overcome their tantrum as well, because they all have some tantrum. So how we need to control their tantrum, and the work you are working before the pandemic with their students and with their patients. So how parents are going to be continue your things at home.
So currently, I am doing teletherapy online with 85% of my caseload that I have been working with prior to the pandemic. And it's exactly what you're saying. A lot of parents, a lot of these children that I am working with are special needs, and some individuals need more assistance than others. And a big thing and a big message when working with each and every parent, and this stems from my learnings with Susie Lula, is the importance of self care. Parents may have one child that's special needs, or they may have three or four other children maybe that are special needs, or maybe typically or neurodevelopmentally typically development, and the parents primal focus initially needs to be on themselves, because if they're not taking care of themselves, how are they going to be able to take care of their other child or their other children? So the primal focus that I've spoken to and told every parent is, first you really need to focus in on yourself, making sure that you are taking care of yourself. So what that means, what means for one person may mean something else to a different person. So it may mean making sure to sleep well, making sure to exercise, making sure to meditate, making sure to go on a walk, making sure to talking to a friend, making sure to talking to a coach, making sure to read, to eat, to bath, whatever it may be for that parent. making sure that they're taking that time for themselves. Why? Because if they're not full energized, and if they're not having the ability, and they're not having enough charge within themselves, how are they going to be able to take care of their special needs child? If they're so depleted, they need the energy. So always tell them as best as they can. If there's an individual, maybe there's another primary caregiver in their home, a half hour, an hour a day, if they can get out and about, maybe, or if they can do something else in the home and stay in the bedroom just for a little bit, so they have their own time, so that they can be there for their family. Because in general, being with kids on a day-to-day basis is a challenge. And then on top of it, COVID, and on top of it, many people maybe aren't able to go outside. So that's another component. And now you're with your significant other, and you're with your children. And then on top of that, now there's a child that has special needs on top of that. And this child may be in the past out and about 5-6 hours a day, and maybe primary caregiver would have more time for themselves, or maybe primary caregiver was working and outside of the home, whatever the dynamic may be. And it always comes back to self-care of the caregivers, of the mom, of the dad, of the significant other, or whoever's in the home, so that they can be there for the child. So now the next step is, so now the child is having a lot of tantrums, and the child is really having challenges. So parent touching base, if there's any therapists that involve, first most touching base with them. What are their suggestions? What are the ideas? How can you help? How can I be of assistance? Based on what I've been telling my clients is always noting what is the trigger for the child, what is causing the meltdown. And it always goes back to a concept called HALT, which is, and it's an acronym, and it stands for H is for hungry, L is the child feeling lonely, and T is tired. So it's always assessing and seeing, where is this child at? What is this trigger coming from? And when the parent is able to see, oh, the child's tired, okay, maybe now it's time for a nap. Oh, the child's hungry, maybe I'm going to give the child food. Oh, the child's lonely, maybe we need some time for connection. Maybe we need time for interaction. Maybe I'm going to play the child's favorite game. Maybe I'm going to have conversation with the child. Maybe I'm going to do an activity and I need to really cook right now. Maybe I'm going to try to incorporate the child with cooking. Maybe I will put on some music. So the parent is constantly, and this is as Dr. Shafali says, doing this dance of this child is tantruming, what is coming, what is happening, what is the trigger, and it's this dance of what's happening, what's going on, and it's ebbing and flowing with where the child's at. And it's not about controlling behavior, controlling the meltdown. It's noticing, okay, my child is having a meltdown. Making sure when the child is melting down, always I tell parents, making sure that the child is safe. They're not a threat to themselves or other people, because I have some little ones that I work with that bang their head, or they scratch on their skin, or they bite. So just parents need to be aware and know their child and watch, is the child inflicting or doing any of these behaviors? If they are, the parent needs to intervene like that. No ifs, ands, or buts. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It's safety. If the child is hurting another sibling, hurting the parents, no ifs, ands, or buts. Whatever means necessary, you need to take that child, and you need to, if need be, restrain the child, because some of these children that I'm working with can be physically threatening to themselves and other people. So that's film role. So if the child is melting down and they're not in the threat of themselves or other people, I say to the parents, like, let the meltdown be, watch, and you can come over, see, is the child receptive to a hug? If the child is, go ahead and give it. If the child's not, okay, you can just sit and like watch this meltdown ebb and flow, watching the behavior, being there for the child, connecting with the child, just being in present with the child, not leaving the child, being there and watching. Is the child wanting the hug maybe 2 minutes later? Okay, no, not yet. Just the parent sitting there, being there, holding and cultivating that space so that the child knows that the parent is there. And it's also when, another thing also that I've noted is, when the child is tantruming and melting down, it's not an opportunity and it's not time to have conversation with the child. They're not in a state of mind to be having conversation. The idea is to let the meltdown be, let the meltdown flow. What was the trigger? Potentially in the future, how can I maybe prevent a meltdown like that from happening in the future? Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. It's okay. And it's just the realization, especially parents that have children that have special needs, and even for typically parents have typically developing, which I think there's no children that is typical. There's no child that's really in the box. So I'm kind of using that term very lightly. It's the idea of knowing where your child's at and knowing that the parent is doing the best that they can in each and every moment, and considering the circumstances that parents are in. It's just acknowledging that the parent is doing the best that they can, making sure that they're taking care of themselves. And when the meltdown is happening, understand where is this trigger coming from this child. Maybe I can prevent it, maybe I can't prevent it. And the parent just providing this open space for the child so that the child knows that the parent is present and the parent is there to be able to help. So thank you so much for taking the time to share with me today. And I hope that you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Janai. Thank you for your time, for your experience. That's amazing. We learned lot of things, and as well as you just guide us how we need to work with our kids who's are neurodiversity disorders, who's are suffering with neurodiversity disorders. That's amazing. Thank you. I think it is a very productive session in my field. That's amazing. I am very thankful to you. I have no words to say thank you because this is your humbleness.
Thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I'm so grateful and thankful to have this conversation with you. And if it's okay, if people that are interested in finding out more about my book, it will be on my website. My website is ChaniMessinger.com. It's ChaniMessinger.com. And I'm just so incredibly excited and I'm so grateful just to have conversation and to finally connect, and just amazing work that you are putting out into the world, just exposing people to people of different disciplines, of different cultures and different environments. And I just think it's really, really incredible. So thank you for all that you do and spreading your beautiful light into the world. Thank you.
Thank you, but again, sorry for from my side because I will never give you a time to say something about your personal life. I am very selfish about it because when I'm just feeling that yes, you are a occupational therapist, so I need to grab your all information and spreading to the parents who's are who need your guideline, who need the tips how to work with them. Thank you. I'm very thankful to you.
My pleasure. Thank you. If any parents or anyone watching has questions, feel free to directly Facebook message me. I would be honored to give some tips or some ideas to help.
Thank you. But I request you please paste your website under the comments after leaving this session. Thank you. Thank you. God bless
Thank
you.
you so much. Have an
Have
incredible
a good
day.
day.
Thank you so much. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for watching this informative and very productive video and showing your interest through messages, comments, and emojis. That was amazing session. I have no word to say thank you, Janai, because Janai is a very competent and she has a very good command on this subject. So that's why I just ask a very typical questions that was a hurdle for our parents who are dealing you know with special child as well. So in the end, this topic based on the autism and occupational therapy. um, in the end, this interview series is sponsored by Rehan Foundation and Institute of Peace. Thank you. We will meet after this. Allah Hafiz. God bless you.